But the challenge is the money that is coming in isn't sufficient. So prior, we had a lot of money coming in, but it was short term. Right now, we have less money coming in, but it's longer term. But then we need to ask ourselves, if investors are not putting money into shares, the rule of the thumb is that the money then goes into bonds. Money will flow into bonds. But is that correct? Perhaps yes, especially if you look at it from this perspective. And just consider this very carefully. Our total national external debt when the government came in was just 2 trillion naira. Total national external debt for both states and the federal government, 2 trillion naira. Today, it is in an excess of 4 trillion naira. So in less than 2 years, external borrowings has more than doubled. So clearly, investors are more interested in bonds right now because the bonds also offer attractive interest rates. And that's on the external perspective. On the domestic perspective, the federal government's domestic borrowing, when it came in the second quarter of 2015, was 8.4 trillion naira. 8.4 trillion naira. That has risen to over 12 trillion naira. Wow. So again, there's a lot of people feeling that the alternative to investing in shares is to give money to the Nigerian government. One way to really understand the magnitude of the FG's domestic borrowing, moving from 8.4 trillion naira to 12 trillion naira, what that means is the FG is borrowing at the average rate of 6 billion naira every day. What is 6 billion naira? Now, we remember what had happened some months back, whereby we found a lot of money in that Ikoyi apartment. It was then said it was approximately 13 billion naira.
Okay, pardon me. We need to go to break, but we'll be back in a moment. Join us again. Welcome back. Ajide, let's look at the capital inflow from primarily US and UK over the period 4 years or thereabout. What kind of figures are we talking about here?
So what we've looked at is, and we've seen two things. We're looking at the impact of America first, the rhetoric of Donald Trump, and looking at the impact of Brexit. And if you look at that from the amount of capital coming into the country, and the reason why this is of cosmic significance is the UK and the US are the two nations that most of our capital comes in from. So if you look at that third thing, as at the first quarter of 2014, capital importation from the UK and the US was in excess of 70%. But we've seen a significant decline, consistency in that decline. And so today, the UK and US only accounts for 57% of the capital that comes into the country. So clearly we can see they are no longer interested in investing in Nigeria in the short term. So less money is coming in and more money is staying back to develop their own nation. So it clearly means we also have to find ways of growing our revenue to develop our nation. So even though our debt is sustainable based on several global indicators, because we are not growing revenue, our debt isn't suitable.
So now that the government is talking about getting us out of recession, where should the model point towards? Is it the private sector that will be able to champion this, or is it the government?
It has to be the private sector. Even getting out of recession, let's look at what history tells us. 1992, when we got out of recession, it was the first quarter that led the growth. So the growth in the first quarter of 1992 was the highest among the 4 quarters, 2.57%. Now, even let's look at our two most recent years. 2015, when the economy still grew, the first quarter led the growth, 2.79%. 2016, even when we went into recession, it was the first quarter of the year that had the least contraction. Now, put all of this together, it simply means in most times, based on our history, what happens in the first quarter determines a lot. So this time around, the economy has contracted in the first quarter, negative 0.52%, yet the government strongly feels we will soon get out of recession, it only means three things, Gimba. It's either we do not take history seriously, or the second is the government knows something that we do not know, or perhaps the third, the government intends to do something that it has never ever done before. And a lot of Nigerians hope that the third is what the government intends to do.
So what about the job creation? We're looking at how does that impact on our efforts to get out of recession?
The government also can't create the number of jobs that is required to sustain this economy. 11,000 Nigerians come into the labor force every day. So the government needs to clearly look at how to enhance various sectors that can grow these jobs. The manufacturing sector, the arts, entertainment and recreation sector. We need to carefully look at the arithmetic, because there are 5 sectors that currently are experiencing double-digit growth. And in the days ahead, we'll reveal which 5 sectors of the economy are experiencing this double-digit growth.
All right, and that's where we'll anchor. Jide Ogunsanwo, our data and information analyst.